Hi, welcome to the Weekday Daily Show with Miss Linda and Miss Linda's Reading Support Group. Usually we have Deidre here with us, and that's why I'm a few minutes late starting this live stream. I'm not sure, I was checking on her. I'm not sure why she's not here, but so we might not have fancy banners and all that good stuff today, but you can still comment in the Facebook group. And I should see comments pop up here, and I'll try to field them myself. That's why I have Deidre usually, but I'll do my best. So tonight I want to talk to you about reading aloud. I wrote a blog on yesterday, and posted it on my website, myhighimpacttutoring.com. And the blog basically breaks down into 5 parts. So we're going to look deeper into each of those parts this week, Monday through Friday. And the first part of the blog, so if you want to go read it, you just go to myhighimpacttutoring.com/blog with a www in front. Okay. And then you see the whole blog, and you don't have to do it right now. You can do that later, but it'll show you, it'll kind of map out for you every week what we'll be breaking down in the lives during the week. So reading aloud. My whole entire group, Miss Linda's Reading Support Group, is devoted to helping parents set up a home guided reading program so that they can support their child while they're tutoring a child who is behind, say, grade levels in reading. And so the parents have hired a tutor. I've found through my student data that children can drastically cut the time down that it takes them to close the reading gap, to level up grade levels in their reading fluency. If the parent makes the time during the week on days that they're not tutoring to let the child read aloud to them for 20 to 30 minutes each day. So it builds phonological awareness, which means that we can hear our mistakes. And reading aloud is something that is not done in school anymore. It used to be done back in the old days, pioneer days. Kids had to stand up at the front of the classroom and do recitation, and they probably hated it. I'm sure they hated it. But it did serve a purpose, and the purpose was so that you could hear when you make a mistake and then go back and correct it. So it's very, very important for the teacher too, or the tutor, or the listener, the parent, to hear the child read aloud so that you can tell what they do and don't know. Since reading aloud is frowned upon, reading aloud to the class, is frowned upon now because we don't want to put children through emotional trauma. But there aren't that many opportunities now for children to read aloud to a listener so that the listener can then help correct their mistakes. And that's where the magic of guided reading really happens. So anyway, reading aloud and why it's important anyway. So I thought that I would talk about this experience that I had last night. I was watching on Netflix a little mini series that they made out of a book that I had actually read. And it's called All the Light We Cannot See. And I had seen that come on Netflix, and I did not want to watch it because I read the book, and the book was a thing of beauty. It was written like poetry. It was so amazing. And it became sort of an instant classic as soon as it came out. The author spent like 10 years or something writing the book, constructing this story and wrapping this beautiful language around it. And, we see these movies and it's like an hour and a half of our life. And we're like, consumed another story. But when you read the book, especially when you read it aloud, you can really hear the language and you can understand where this art really comes from and why books are so important. So I thought that I would read aloud a little bit to you from this amazing book, All the Light We Cannot See, just in case you were thinking of going and watching it on Netflix, so you could kind of feel the difference between hearing the story and, from the original and watching it on Netflix. So here we go. Muséum National d'Histoire Naturelle. Marie-Laure Leblanc is a tall and freckled 6-year-old in Paris with rapidly deteriorating eyesight when her father sends her on a children's tour of the museum where he works. The guide is a hunchbacked old warder, hardly taller than a child himself. He raps the tip of his cane against the floor for attention, then leads his dozen charges across the gardens to the galleries. The children watch engineers use pulleys to lift a fossilized dinosaur femur. They see a stuffed giraffe in a closet, patches of hide wearing off its back. They peer into taxidermist drawers full of feathers and talons and glass eyeballs. They flip through 200-year-old herbarium sheets bedecked with orchids and daisies and herbs. Eventually, they climb 16 steps into the gallery of mineralogy. The guides show them agate from Brazil and violet amethysts and a meteorite on a pedestal that he claims is as ancient as the solar system itself. Then he leads them single file down 2 twisting staircases and along several corridors and stops outside an iron door with a single keyhole. "End of tour," he says. A girl says, "But what's through there?" "Behind this door is another locked door, slightly smaller." "And what's behind that?" "A third locked door, smaller yet." "What's behind that?" "A fourth door and a fifth, on and on until you reach a 13th, a little locked door no bigger than a shoe." The children lean forward, and then, behind the 13th door, the guide flourishes one of his impossibly wrinkled hands, is the Sea of Flames. Puzzlement, fidgeting. "Come now, you've never heard of the Sea of Flames?" The children shake their heads. Marie-Laure squints up at the naked bulbs strung in 3-yard intervals along the ceiling. Each sets a rainbow-colored halo, rotating in her vision. The guide hangs his cane on his wrist and rubs his hands together. "It's a long story. Do you want to hear a long story?" He clears his throat. Centuries ago, in the place we now call Borneo, a prince plucked a blue stone from a dry riverbed because he thought it was pretty. But on the way back to his palace, the prince was attacked by men on horseback and stabbed in the heart. Stabbed in the heart? Is this true? A boy says, "Hush." The thieves stole his rings, his horse, everything. But because the little blue stone was clenched in his fist, they did not discover it. And the dying prince managed to crawl home. Then he fell unconscious for 10 days. On the 10th day, to the amazement of his nurses, he sat up, opened his hand, and there was the stone. The Sultan's doctor said it was a miracle, that the prince never should have survived such a violent wound. The nurses said the stone must have healing powers. The Sultan's jeweler said something else. They said the stone was the largest raw diamond anyone had ever seen. Their most gifted stonecutter spent 80 days faceting it, and when he was done, it was a brilliant blue, the blue of tropical seas, but it had a touch of red at its center, like flames inside a drop of water. The Sultan had the diamond fitted into a crown for the prince, and it was said that when the young prince sat on his throne and the sun hit him just so, he became so dazzling that visitors could not distinguish his figure from light itself. "Are you sure this is true?" asks the girl. "Hush," says the boy. The stone came to be known as the Sea of Flames. Some believe the prince was a deity, that as long as he kept the stone, he could not be killed. But something strange began to happen. The longer the prince wore his crown, the worse his luck became. In a month, he lost his brother to drowning and a second brother to snakebite. Within 6 months, his father died of disease. To make matters even worse, the Sultan's scouts announced that a great army was gathering in the east. The prince called together his father's advisors. All said he should prepare for war. All but one, a priest who said he'd had a dream. In the dream, the goddess of the earth told him she'd made the Sea of Flames as a gift for her lover, the god of the sea, and was sending the jewel to him through the river. But when the river dried up and the prince plucked it out, the goddess became enraged. She cursed the stone and whoever kept it. Every child leans forward, Marie Laura along with them. The curse was this: the keeper of the stone would live forever, but so long as he kept it, misfortunes would fall on all those he loved, one after another in unending rain. So, this story is all about this girl who goes blind, and her father works in this museum, and he works with the gems. And the war comes, World War II, and they're in France and they're being bombed. And it's the very end of the war, and they had been overtaken by the Germans. So they're actually being bombed by the Americans, who are trying to get rid of the Germans' last stronghold in France. So the Americans are there to save them, but they're bombing the city to get the Germans out. So it's kind of ironic, you know. But there's this German jeweler who his task was to go all over Europe and gather all these precious jewels and bring them back to Germany, to the Nazis. So he's looking for the girl because he had heard that her father kept all the jewels in this museum, and he had heard about the Sea of Flames, this gigantic diamond. It was so big, and it was pure, but it was so big that when you held it up, it reflected blue, I guess from the blue in the atmosphere. And then there was this tiny flame of red in the center. And so it was just very, very valuable. And he was looking for it, and he figured that her father had probably hid it in his house when the war started, figuring that the Germans were going to come and take everything that was in the museum anyway. So he's looking for the girl because he's heard that the father's disappeared, but that the girl is still living there in that town. So the whole movie is about, what happened to the Sea of Flames? Where did he hide it? Where did her father hide it? And it's very exciting. But when I read the book the first time, I was just taken by all these words that the author used. Just things like talons and femur and just deity and words that children aren't exposed to if they don't read them in books. So we might see a bird's claws in a movie, but that doesn't give us the word talon. The claws are talons. Or we might see a big dinosaur bone in a movie, but that doesn't give us the word femur for the giant, the longest bone in our body is our thigh bone. So that would be the upper thigh of the dinosaur. It's femur. Um, the vocabulary that children are exposed to when they read is um, is really good vocabulary. And the when we get our stories from TV and movies, we just don't get the vocabulary. We get some dialogue that's going on in the movie, but we're actually just looking at pictures. So it's driving us a little bit backward in terms of civilization if we just get our stories in pictures. We started telling stories in pictures. We started off, the human race, drawing stories, drawing pictures on cave walls. And as language developed later, we started writing. So, and then, later we had the printing press and we could have all these access to all these wonderful books. Now we have the internet. You can click a button and order a book on Amazon, get it immediately on Kindle. You don't even have to go to the bookstore, and you're just reading it right away on your computer screen. And so there's easy access to books. And these words are words that our children need to know in order to be literate. So I just wanted to give you a little experience there of words. And then I want to say another thing about reading aloud. Guided reading involves the child reading to the parent. Oh, there's my cat coming in the door behind me. That creepy door open. And most of us think about reading aloud in the home as the parent reading to the child. A lot of us had bonding experiences with our parents when we were little, when they would read us books at bedtime, or we would snuggle up on the couch and they would read to us. And that is very good for children's early vocabulary learning and the bonding time with the parent, and also hearing how fluent reading sounds by listening to the parent, by listening to a fluent reader read. That develops phonological awareness, or the ability to hear what the sounds should sound like, for the child. Guided reading takes it a step farther. So I want to be really clear when I'm talking about making time for reading in the home. If you have a child who is behind grade level in reading, what they need to do is read to you. So I'm not saying don't read to your children, but this is something that is what my group is all about, and that we need to make happen, is time to listen, time for parents to listen while the child reads aloud. And you will see as we go through this week, we're just going to dive right in to my basic practices, my 5 basic practices that I use during reading lessons. The reading aloud, the child reading aloud to me. Oh, there's a cattail. Come on, Alexander, get down. The child reading aloud, or adult, if you have an adult literacy student, reading to a listener. Second, the noting of miscues that the listener does while the student is reading aloud. Third, the usage of word families to find similar words to the miscues or the words that the reader missed while they were reading, and the showing of that pattern in a list of similar words until the reader gets the pattern for how to pronounce that particular combination of letters in a word. Fourth, reasons that you might want to switch up the order of reading and looking at the words and the word families. So sometimes, for very specific reasons, I have some of my students read word lists first and then read aloud. And I'll explain that when we come to that during the week. And then the fifth one is a writing component. Vocabulary lists, flashcards, spelling tests, okay? And how getting the hand involved and that kinesthetic activity improves the memory. We all had the spelling tests every Friday. We all wrote the spelling lists back in the day, and you know what? It works. So those are the 5 things we're going to talk about this week. They're my 5 pillars of my guided reading lessons. And yeah, I'm going to give away all the secrets. So I guess that's about it for tonight. I just welcome you and stay with us for the week. And at my group, Miss Linda's reading support group, if you're watching this on YouTube, or if you're already in the group, that's great. You'll see that there's an email posted there. And that's Deidre, who assists me with the group. And it's deidre.readingrevolution@gmail.com. And Deidre is DEIDRA .readingrevolution@gmail.com. And if you email Deidre, she will send you the Guided Reading Buddy for free, which is my weekly workbook that you will want to have as we work through setting up your home guided reading program and zooming your child ahead with their reading. All right, thanks so much, and have a great night, and see you tomorrow, 5:30 Eastern Time. I'll be here again. Bye-bye.